Okay, welcome to our marriage live stream. Donnie and Donna are back from their vacation. Welcome back.
We
Thank
missed you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, we went on without you.
Yes, I know.
But
But
we did
you
miss
are
you.
missed.
As the
Yeah.
world will.
Yeah, that's the Lord. This is the Lord will, but we did miss you guys, so it's good to have you back. Today we're talking about parenting. So marriage and parenting, and for those that are following along in our books, this is based out of Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. And we're going to be talking about questions 3, 5, and 6 mostly for our meeting today, but parenting. And this is a good combo because Kat and I have 5 kids left in the home, 6 kids total, and you guys now have grandkids and are basically empty nesters. We would, I feel like we'd trade places with you in a heartbeat. I feel like you're the light at the end of the tunnel for us. You know what I'm saying? One day it'll happen. What do you think?
I'm not wishing, I'm not ready to get to that stage yet.
That day will come
Still.
sooner than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
What'd you
comes
say?
quick.
It comes sooner than you think.
It comes quick.
Like you told me that saying that lady, that justice, the Supreme Justice,
Oh, yeah.
what she said, and
Yeah.
I was telling somebody that this week, and I was
Yeah,
just,
what did she say? What was her line?
something about how hard,
Oh, yeah.
like, cause did
It's,
is-
yeah,
is her
life
name
is hard, but at
Amy
least it's
Barrett?
short. Yeah, Amy Comey Barrett.
yes,
Yeah.
okay. Life is hard,
But at
like,
least it's
she
short.
has adopted this one, adopted that one, and takes in this one, and takes in that one. But life is short,
Yeah.
so it won't be hard for very long.
Yeah.
I've
I
had-
do love that line. That's a great line.
Yeah, and I'm just like the opposite. Like a week is too much.
I need light at the end of the tunnel.
I've had moments within the past few months, and I think to myself, when we're old, we're gonna say these are the good old days. Right
Give
now
me a
is the
moment.
good old
Give me
days.
a moment you thought that to yourself.
Just when the kids are playing outside, I think to myself, these are the good old days. I'm gonna be retired, and
And remembering these moments?
yeah, this moment in time, I'm gonna remember this. This is the good old days.
True.
Yeah.
And kids want to reminisce and laugh and oh, I forgot about that. That was great. You know.
Yeah, having
Yeah.
all the kids back, when Ethan comes back for dinner and everyone's together. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay, first question. Check this out. Why is God's basic command to children obey your parents? What do you guys think about that? Why is his basic command obey? Thoughts? What do you got? Anything? Nothing? The whole bunch of nothing?
my initial thought is because kids don't know anything. They just don't know what they're doing. And so
You better obey
They-
your parents or you won't live? What do you say?
I just look at the little ones. They don't know how to keep themselves safe. They
Yeah.
don't know how to stay out of trouble. And so
Okay.
they don't know what they don't know. And so to obey your parents keeps you safe, keeps you, hopefully happy, fed, clothed, all those things.
Okay. You
That's
buying that?
what first comes
I
to mind.
absolutely am.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
We're here to teach our children and to show them how life is to be lived.
Yeah.
How life is to be lived.
Yeah.
Good, bad. All those things.
I think in this Ephesians passage, especially 5 and 6, there tends to be a lot of imagery that Paul creates where he's like, husbands love your wives like Christ loved the church, right? And he'll say he'll talk about sexual unity and then he'll flip back and forth and he'll say, but I'm not really even talking about sex. I'm talking about the church. You know what I'm saying? And then he'll be like, parents, teach your children and children obey your parents. And he talks about these it's like a springboard to a bigger subject, right? And so what pops into my mind is I'm thinking, I know this sounds extreme, but I think at some level Paul's thinking, you obey your parents because until you are old enough to conceptualize God, your parents are your first example of the character of God, right? I know it's almost, that seems like a big thing, but it's in this way, in big ways, right? Your parents are the first ones who are going to inform you of justice, right and wrong, right? What's right and what's wrong. And they're the first ones who are going to offer you love and grace because you're going to need it, right? So that, like, they're your first exposure to the character traits of God, right? So it's like obey your parents because your parents are in your life to teach you a little bit about what God's like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's your training ground for your relationship with Christ and ultimately how adults are to obey God when you grow up.
How long does this go on? Obey your children. How like do you have to obey your parents if you're like in your 30s?
Yes. Well, it depends on what you're talking about.
Okay. Well,
Maybe-
you jump to a yes real quick.
Well, definitely respect your parents.
Okay. So respect your parents.
And, like, I don't think parents should be told what to do at age 30.
That's where, like, okay, but we joke, but I see this a lot with parents, right? One of two mistakes. Either they become a friend of their child way too early and not a parent, or they never become a companion of their child, meaning like like someone who's in a relationship that's much more adult, like walking with, not just instructing. Does that make sense? Like that transition, I see a lot of parents never making it, right? They either stay parent, like they've got a kid and they're 30 and they're nagging them like they're 14, or they're 12 and they're treating them like high five, we're just buddies. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the two bookends of like problems. I don't see a lot of great graceful transitions when they get to. How did you guys do? Did you guys do all right with all that? You feel like you nailed that? I mean, you guys got older kids.
I don't know what I need an example. Like,
Well, do you think? I mean, like you've got kids that are now in their 30s.
40. He's
and
gonna be
40. You got 30s
40,
and 40s.
36, 30,
I don't know if we nailed it because I think we had some rules, strict rules that didn't want to be abided by or obeyed from a couple of them.
Well, no,
They went
this
off
is
on their own,
this is
so-
kind of what I wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys have a lot of life experience in this. You got kids that got to like adolescence, late adolescence, and no judgment. This is like everybody's problem, right? I was spending some time with a friend on Sunday who's in that same situation where he's got an older adolescent child who's basically like, in his opinion, kind of come off the rails. You know what I mean? It's like they're kind of wilding out, doing their own thing, and navigating that for parents is tough. Like navigating what's the right thing to do, like in those situations.
I think, I don't know.
I don't know that any of them have really come off the rails.
Well, I guess it depends on what you
You know.
define. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Like if you're 16, 17, and you've basically run away from the home because of the home rules, you're coming off the rails. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
man.
go with that.
So, but you guys have been through some of that. You guys have
Yeah.
had some of those challenges. You have 4 kids go through adolescence and figure that out, you know, or 5 kids go through adolescence, figure that out. So, you paused. You were like, no, we had some challenges with some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you do it? How did you navigate it? Did you feel like you did it right? Would you do it differently the next time?
I would do it differently now.
Okay. What would you change?
And it comes along further in the study as well with exasperating your children
Okay.
or I'll use our youngest as the most recent example,
Okay.
obviously. I wanted her home at a certain time because I'm getting up and going to work in the morning. She didn't feel like she needed to follow those rules.
Right.
And there were some other things, nothing crazy,
Right.
but then it went sideways and she's moving out. And I went from, okay, I want you home at midnight to, I don't know where you're at. I mean, I kind of did, but
Yeah.
I wasn't 100% sure, you know.
Yeah.
And all I wanted, at that time was to know where your children are and know that they're safe, know that they're home safe. I wait up.
Yeah.
I'm one of those parents. I'm not going to, listen for the car door to slam or whatever. I'm going to be sitting up waiting until my children come home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult for me to realize. And looking back, there could have been some better negotiations there, and I could have, given maybe a little bit more on the rules as well, especially
Really?
when you're hit that hard. Yeah, it was a tough time for me.
Yeah,
It
but
was
do
a
you
lot.
think you were overly, like you thought you were too overbearing? You think he was too overbearing?
Well, so we're talking about Emily.
But I'm just
But,
saying, like,
literally, Emily just went from like a really, like, we knew who Emily was until she met this kid and then who she's marrying now, and then Emily changed into a different person.
yeah,
Like, are you gonna be home for dinner? Like, she would be like, we have to go to church together as a family, and like was not real thrilled with us like serving because she wanted us to sit together as a family. Like, that was important to her. And now she's like up before the sunrise to go live stream church with Jacob, you know. So it was just like this whole, like, our whole world turned upside down because all of a sudden it was like Emily, great grades, Emily up off to school, home, you know. Like, then she just became unpredictable, and then that got us upset, you know. Like, this isn't happening.
yeah. But how do you know, like, when you're a parent? No, I'm thinking that's what, 16, 17, 18.
Well,
She was-
she was 18.
18.
That's
So at
why
18
thought
She was
didn't
18
have
when
to
she
listen to-
left. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's 18, it's like, hey, you're an adult. If you're
Right.
gonna leave, you're gonna leave. There's nothing to it. That's even
Right.
that's a less complicated situation. If you got a 17 or a 16, then you're in that window where it's kind
Yeah.
of like,
A runaway. And
yeah, it's kind of like, okay, do we
reporting
do the whole runaway thing? Do we kind of confine them here? You know what I'm saying? Through like a bunch of different means. What do you do in those situations? I mean, you didn't have to deal with that, but
No, we didn't have to deal with underage.
Right.
So, you know, she was an adult at the age of 18. I've dealt with it in my work.
yeah, would you
Many
have
times.
would you have advised differently or handled it differently if she was 17? Because that's a tough thing, right?
It's a tough thing.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, you want the love and respect from your kids. You need to love and respect your kids.
Yeah.
But you also need to make sure that they're safe. And like Kat was saying, they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a big, nasty world out there with,
Yeah.
you know, young
Yeah.
ladies especially coming
Well,
up missing.
I mean, I feel like at 17, I just think when I was 17, I couldn't be told anything. You know, what do you do? And
Right.
so you can set the boundary and let them know they're loved, and they're going to do what they want to do because they think they know it all at that point, and hope that the foundation that you've created up until that point,
Like they can come back at some point,
well,
but
they
you may
can
have
come
to
back,
let them
or
walk
that
away.
they don't even go that route, you
Yeah.
know. But that's a tough age. You can't physically restrain your
No, you
your
can't.
16 or 17-year-old. So
Yeah.
I mean, if they go, you just, I don't know. That's tough. We've never had to deal with that, fortunately. But I think if one of our kids did not want to follow the rules, we have a household and other children to protect, and so these are the rules, and take it or leave it.
Yeah. We've tried to be, I'm not saying we've knocked out of the park, but we have tried to gracefully navigate the transition from instructive parent with like 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old, right? Like, hey, there's a lot of instruction, there's a lot of direction, there's a lot of boundaries and correction and all that kind of stuff, to friendship-based relationship with an adult child, right? We have a 22-year-old child where it's like, now we're transitioning. And I think part of that transition, some of the complicated part of that is you got to leave behind the things you've always done as a parent, right? Like, you can't start every conversation with, no, let me correct, no, let me nag, have you done this, you have to leave all that behind, and you've been in that mode for such a long time that it's hard. Like, you just still worry, as a parent would worry, you think parent thoughts, you know what I'm saying? So you kind of get drawn into nagging a little bit with these adult children. And so for me, I caught myself in, like, when Ethan went out and started working and, you know, was on his own, I caught myself like giving him unwarranted advice, and then just saying, I got to stop this, because I can sense him on the other side of the phone going, I didn't ask for this. Does that make sense? And like, and at some point, if you do that long enough, then there's not a relationship there. There's just like the nagging dad thing there,
They're
right?
gonna-
And he doesn't want that. He wants a relationship. And so now I feel like we're in this place where like when when we're going to spend time together, he's looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. And it doesn't begin with, you know what you should do? You know what you should do? You know what you should do? Right? Which you still want to do. Like we still want to do that sometimes. Like we'll say it privately to each other, like, you know, he should really, you know, but we just kind of keep it to ourselves. It's like, hey man, you're an adult. You get to make your own decisions. You're a big boy. You know? So, and when he says something, we don't like overly react, you know? At 22, he'll say something, we're like, okay. You know, we just kind of go,
Hopefully he
uh-huh.
grows out of that mentality.
You know, but we just kind of, you kind of accept things and you go, like, I wouldn't correct a friend on this, right? And this is an adult now who's making adult decisions. But that transition is tough for a lot of parents. Do you feel like you're there with all your adult kids now where they come to you for advice and they want your advice, they want your input, and it's not just like unwarranted, it's not just like
I think so.
a nagging system? Yeah?
I think they come to Donna more than me.
Okay.
I truly do, and I don't know if it's that I have. Well, obviously I have things to work on, but I think they come to her. They can confide in her, and I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah,
guess.
but I mean, knowing
I'm not saying
Donna,
that they
she's
love
a
me
great
any less,
listener.
but yeah, she's a great listener, and I'm like, okay, let's do this, and
A
Yeah,
solver.
you're a
you need to do
fixer.
this, let's
Yeah.
move
You're
on.
a fixer. She's a listener, and she
absolutely.
gets people's emotions. Like, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I know that the kids have been over and I can tune into like, she just wants you to listen.
Yes.
And if you
You know those things.
if you keep throwing out your dad jokes, and if you know, if you keep going to, you know, like he'll say, yeah, do that, you know, go jump off that cliff. That sounds like a great. I'm not saying that's what you say, but
No.
like like
A little bit of
instead
that
of just
attitude.
Yeah.
listening, because I think sometimes when kids are really venting, and even if it gets emotional or whatever, like they hear themselves. They will hear what they're saying and
They'll realize.
it will help readjust it for themselves just by them hearing themselves.
Yeah, pretty much that's the basis of all counseling,
know.
right? That as you're talking through it, talk therapy is based on, hey, as we're talking through it out loud, that's part of your processing experience. So you're processing the information again as you hear yourself say it out loud, like, and you're thinking, oh, maybe that doesn't make sense a little bit, you know, to some extent. What do you think, counselor?
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know. I think with a lot of parents, they miss this, you know, and either side is bad. I think if you treat your child like a friend too early, it's bad. And everybody that's ever been around a parent-like situation like that, it's just asking for a disaster, and you see it coming like a freight train. And you see parents where the kids, once they leave the house, they're like, good riddance, thank you, Lord. Can't take it anymore. And they've not done any of that transitional work and invited that relationship back. You know what I'm saying? So early on, we kept saying, I would say to Kat all the time, our goal is to raise kids that want to go and want to come home, but not stay. You know what I'm saying? They want to go and they're trained to go, but they'll come back and not stay. You know, they want to come back. They want to see us again. You know,
Yes.
not like, see you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
That's actually the joy of this time of our lives, I think, is spending time with our kids.
Right.
Like our adult kids who are very wise and give us information too, you know?
Yeah, sure.
So,
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. Okay. Question number 2. Why is the first command to fathers something they should not do? Don't. One of the translations says exasperate, and the other translation will say something like provoke. Don't provoke your children. What do you think that means?
I think frustrate them by not listening,
Yeah.
being overbearing. Some of the things we've already kind of talked
Yeah.
about.
Maybe discourage. Don't discourage your children.
Yeah, you don't want to break their spirit.
Yeah, break their spirit.
The Colossians, the partner passes this. Paul gives very similar instructions to the Colossian church, and he actually says those words. He says, don't exasperate your children to discouragement. You know what I'm saying? Or provoke your children to discouragement. So, But what do you think? I mean, what does that actually mean on the ground? When does that actually happen?
When I've read that passage, what comes to mind sometimes is just let them be themselves, which is tough when you're trying to train your children. I don't know, whether it be educationally, being part of a team at home, instruction within the home, helping out within the home, not forcing them to do things my way, or I don't know, they're just so unique and they have their own needs and their own personality, and to try to impress my personality and how I think they should do things can be exasperating sometimes. So
Okay.
just let them be themselves.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay. What do you think of when you think of exasperating your children?
I think of it being, first of all, I think of it being negative.
Mm-hmm.
I think of maybe, like if they can't get something, like if they're not doing something, not making, oh my God, I've never really made fun of kids, but, not make fun of them or talk down to them because they can't do something, or, I don't know. That's not really a strong description, but.
No, it's pretty good. Let me tell you why I think that's good. Let me put words in your mouth that I think we're getting close, right? If you go back to that first question and you start saying, okay, if parents are supposed to be kids' introduction to the character of God, if you're raising a kid that can never please you, it's never enough,
That's what I'm thinking.
then they're exasperated.
Yes.
And see,
Absolutely.
you're supposed to be raising kids that they feel loved, accepted, the grace of God from, right? But if if the parents constantly like, it's never enough, it's never enough, it's never enough, or if they feel that way, even if it's not said, it's never enough. I hear this defined sometimes almost like it's teasing, like don't tease your children. I'm like, well, every parent teases their children and has like goofy times with their children. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I'm not talking about like goofing or picking or poking or wrestling or all that kind. I'm talking about, are you raising a kid who they sense from their mom and dad the pleasure of them as a child, right? But if you're laying your head at your pillow every night as a child going, I just can't live up to their expectations, then basically you've told them there's a God out there that you're not good enough for. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that, the first time they're ever going to learn that is from you, right? And they've got to sense that in you. Like, you're enough for me. I love you just the way you are. It's enough, right? That doesn't mean there won't be correction and moments and friction and justice and right and wrong and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you better know that I love you. You know? I think that's what he's.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to get at. The reason I say let them be themselves is I was having a conversation years ago with someone who was having a difficult time with their teenage son, and he was frustrating, but this mom told me I just decided I needed to let him be himself and love him in that, and it changed their relationship. She was able to enjoy him by just letting him be himself,
Right.
and so
I could go with that as long as it's not self-destructive behavior.
yes, of course,
Right.
yeah.
There's
There's
Yeah.
still a
there has
right
to
and
be
a wrong.
a balance,
Right,
a right and a
yes.
wrong, and
Yeah.
intervention needed.
But I think that's when you know you're nailing it, right? Is if
Right.
if you're having to have the hard conversations even with a teenage child about right and wrong, and they could be heated conversations or tense seasons or moments, but they still know that it's coming from a place of I love you no matter what,
Right.
then you've nailed it, right? That like there's not always gonna be great times, right? There's gonna be some rough times with kids, right? But if they know that they know, then you've accomplished that. That's doesn't mean it's all gonna work out, but they know, right? I can remember there was this one moment. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a one moment where I realized I had not done as much as I wanted to do, like I should have done. So Ethan was probably, I know exactly what it was. It was senior year, and we were talking about 4 weeks before state championship wrestling. My son was
Oh.
a state championship
Yeah.
wrestler, and we're in the kitchen. You remember that night? Oh man,
Yeah.
it got me good. I was like, whoa, okay, I've screwed up here, but it was just like there was a lot of pressure. But He'd been working for 4 years to get to this place. His goal was to be a state championship wrestler. There was just a lot of pressure. And I had brought up this thing from the paper had published that he was the favored contending wrestler for his weight class. Like, it would publish in the paper, and I was like, man, the paper's saying this and that. And he said to me something like, Dad, I can't think about any of this stuff. You're bringing up stuff I can't
You're
think
too
of.
much right
You're
now."
too much right now. And I was like, I kept pushing. I was like, no, what I'm trying to, and I was like trying to explain in the logic of the way I was looking at it. And he would, for whatever reason, he wasn't getting my heart, and I wasn't communicating my heart very well. But he was basically like, almost said the words, "I'm not enough for you," right? And I was like, whoa. Slow down. Like, win or lose, you could not even go to this tournament. You're enough for me. What the hell? It was like a wake up moment. Like,
Right.
holy crap, we're off the rails, and I didn't know we were off the rails.
Right.
But he was communicating it, and I remember thinking, oh man, what? How did that conversation? Did you get that from it? Because that definitely wasn't my intention, right?
But I think a lot of parents do that. We think, well, I'll just speak for myself. I want to use every moment as a training moment. Like, this is so important that
Right.
I teach you this, and this is why I want to teach you this. And Talon said to me a number of times, can you just not use every moment as a teaching moment? Or I'm like,
How
it's so
old is he?
important. You know, I only have you for 3 more years, but I think that's a tough thing for parents to lay that down, or it's a good training for parents to be able to pick up on those cues from your kids and know when enough is enough, and just
I remember, like, we took that pause. Like, when he said
Yeah.
that, like, I remember the shift in the room. It was just me, him, and Kat. And I said, look, dude, let me tell you something. I said, I'm going to say this out loud because maybe we don't say it enough. I said, we think you're, like, the perfect kid. Like, Kat and I say all the time, you've never made any big mistakes. Like, you always do the right thing. We just appreciate your character. Like, you know, you're a leader at the wrestling. You're a leader at school. You're a leader at church. Like, I have coaches coming up to me that don't even coach you. They're like, your son's amazing and blah, 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 blah. I said, like, if you don't hear anything, hear me saying that it's enough, bro. It's
Right,
enough,
right.
right? Like, we don't have to win this tournament. Then he ended up going out and, you know, being second in the state, but it was great. But it was like, dude,
That was
you know, but it was a moment where it was like, hey, if I've exasperated you with my expectations, let's retalk this. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because that's definitely not. I wasn't one of those helicopter like sports parents either, where like I was at every meet going, "You kill him right now, get in there and kill him." You know, I just
Right.
didn't. I
Yeah, kinda.
wasn't like that. You know what I'm saying? I was like, "Hey, you be you. You know, if this is what you want to do, you know, you be you."
It sounds like you were trying to give him encouragement, but it was just
It was
acceptable.
coming off like
Yeah.
too
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
It was coming off like too much. Like, hey, you know, and I was just wanting what he wanted at the time, but.
And I think there are a lot of parents out there that are trying to be a cheerleader for their child,
Right.
and it comes off that way.
And they don't get
We
it.
we don't realize it.
yeah.
We don't realize it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and there probably are parents who maybe even should realize it. Like, they are putting expectations on their kids that they're living through their kids' accomplishments and all that kind of stuff. And if you're doing that, stop. But you know,
Right.
you know, that's a real deal. I mean,
Yeah, they need to live their own life.
Yeah, yeah.
Live their life for you.
right.
This-
You know.
that's a-
And there's the
that's a
flip side of
footnote.
that there are parents that don't even attend their kids' events, don't even
Right.
give them that time. So
Yeah. So, I don't know. That's what I think of when I think of that. Don't exasperate. All right, last question. What attitudes and actions of parents? Wait a minute. What attitudes and actions of parents exasperate their children? Yeah. What? So what's? I guess some of that we've already talked about. What else? Like, are there other attitudes and actions that
indifference, not listening. I think we covered some of
I
that.
think that's a good one though. Like, that's probably one we could spend time on. But yeah, if your kid comes to you with something and you talk over them or talk past them, or you're not listening to what they're, because you know how this goes, right? Like, you're good at this. Sometimes there's a big void between what the person's actually saying and what they actually mean, or what their heart is, or what they're really concerned about. They lead with something to get into something else. You know what I mean? And a lot of parents don't pick up on it. They just, the first thing that comes down the pipe, they're like, we're going to deal with that. Let's fix it, right? And they were like, well, really, I wanted to talk about this other thing they never even got to, and they're like, you killed it. Thank you very much. Moving on. You know, I think that happens a lot. I think guys do that. I do that. We just, you know, let's just fix it. Like, I don't know why we do that.
Well,
but we do.
I think your tendency is to dismiss, not in a negative way, but that's just your personality.
Mm-hmm.
Because to us, we've already been a teen. It's whatever they're dealing with isn't a big deal. Like, we know they'll get past it,
Yeah.
but in their teenage brain, it is important. And so being able to listen and let them know this is important and feel validated is difficult
That's
as an adult.
difficult for me. That's difficult for me. There's a fine line there, right? There's a fine line between like, hey, I'm going to validate your feelings and I'm going to enable your feelings. Like, there's a fine line to where it becomes bad. Like I think some people need to hear like, hey, this isn't the end of the world. You're over examining this. You're over fixating on this. Like, let's come back from the edge a little bit and see it from God's perspective and like get some eternal look at this. Like, you know, there's some of that has to happen with everybody. I definitely bend in that direction more than,
Yeah, but they
Tell me
haven't
how
had
you
the
feel.
life experience to know that yet.
Yeah.
And so there is a fine line, but that's part of a parent's job. Would you agree? It's like helping them.
Back cat up.
she looking for backup.
No, actually, I'm just thinking about like some struggles that our kids are going through now. Like, and in that situation, I give very, very general advice or very neutral advice because I don't want it to look like I'm trying to
Take one side over the
Yeah.
other.
or
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
And I probably go in that direction,
Yeah.
the direction that you're talking about,
Yeah.
and to the point of like, okay, enough of this.
Yeah.
But I think there's a balance to that, right? Like even recently, you know, we've got a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old, and they have typical 16-year-old, 17-year-old ups and downs. And a 17-year-old's down is like the world's ending.
Yeah.
So a lot of that conversation is, oh no, I get that you feel like it's bad, right? But know that life is, there's more, right? Like, there's got to be this balance of like, I love you, I get the fact that you're hurting, and really mean that, and them can be trusting in that, and then go, but let's look at like the bigger picture here, right? Like, can we get to that? Because I don't always do it well, but I worry that if you give them too much like focus on those like things that are not the end of the world, but they're treating like it in the moment, that there's a negative outcome to that. You know what I mean? You let people go down that road too far, they
Yeah.
can get
Yeah.
deep into that
Well,
depression.
you can't let them stay there. You got to kind of pull them along with
Yeah.
our life experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
But still validate what you're feeling is okay,
Right.
and you're going to be okay.
I think
Yeah.
there's age appropriateness too for that.
Mhm.
Like, where's my place in this? Like you're talking about a teenager.
Right.
As an adult, I think in those situations, you kind of have to let go a little bit and let them come to you.
I think what you're naturally good at, you don't probably even notice it. I think Kat's good at it. I don't know if Donnie and I are that great at it, but for parents out there, what I've learned is that if a kid starts a conversation or they've got something going on that's a moment of friction in their life or stuff, if you'll start with questions instead of answers, tell me more. When, why, how, all those kind of questions, and let them really make sure you understand what they're saying, right? When, why, how, what, all those questions, they get it out a lot more, and you get a much more well-rounded picture of what's really going on before you start being the advisor, right? Like, let me fix this for you, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what you should have done, but, if the first out of the gate starts with, let me fix this for you, it shuts down all of that, you know what I'm saying, relational connection stuff. What do you think?
Yeah. With anything, like you were talking about even with counseling, the relationship has to be there first. You cannot your kids are not going to take advice from you if there's not a strong relational connection where they feel loved and seen and cared for. And so, like what you're saying, that's asking questions, caring about their heart, what they think about certain things. That's how that starts. So,
When do you have to, like, let's wrap it up with this idea. When is it better, though? Like, I don't know if we can define this, but at what point do you go, okay, I'm going to turn you over? Like, I'm going to let you make the mistake. You know, I know that's different at every age, but like, when you go, all right, you're going to have to learn this the hard way. I get it. You know,
I think once you've had the conversation and you've listened and it's been a well-rounded conversation and you've gotten your points across, or you've shared your experiences,
yeah,
you've done, at that point, you've done all you can to help them to make that decision, and then they have to go make that decision, whether it be fall flat on their face or, you know, soar like an eagle.
right.
But, you know, you have the conversation with the relationship time. And again, not try to fix it, but just share experiences, I think works a lot.
Hmm.
And let it go.
I think
Yeah.
many times you have to watch your kids fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
how they learn. I think we do that, and I know I do that with all of them, even the little ones. Like, I've explained this to you. I've explained why you can't be on the counter. You know, if you fall off, you know, you're gonna have to learn. But there's age appropriate
Yeah.
boundaries and communications that happen with young children, with school age children, middle school. I do that a lot with the middle and you know, the teens. Like, okay,
Yeah.
you do what you're gonna do, and we'll reconvene once you've made your
Right,
decision. So
right.
that happens at every stage, I would say. But once they're 17, 18, it's kind of
Too late to start it then.
absolutely.
Yeah, you got to start age appropriate the whole way. I was talking to a parent this like a couple weeks ago, and they're dealing with like a middle school age kid. And one of the things she said something so funny to me. She was like, "Hey, I'm really struggling for answers here on this. You know, like I have to follow up with his teachers all the time, and I've got to like check on his grades all the time, and we're trying to like reach these certain benchmarks academically, and that's how the conversation was
We-
kind of going."
We are.
Yeah, and she said, "Do you have any advice for me?" And I said, "You're not going to like my advice." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I would never do what you're doing." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "I would not contact my 8th grade student's teacher. I would say at the first semester, you bring home this grade or this grade, there are going to be some ramifications, and now it's completely your responsibility to get it done." And she was still mitigating all of the outcomes, right? I've got to make sure we get to the right college, and if it starts at 8th grade, we got to make sure the grades are right, and I got to get this, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's mitigating the outcomes instead of like going, here's the standard, I know you can reach it, I love you, right? And I want to see you successful, and there are going to be consequences if you slack, right? Like, all that wasn't set up, it was just, I'm going to mitigate. I'm going to keep interjecting. I'm going to keep like dealing with it daily and wear myself out over it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we've never babysat even our elementary school kids' grades. I mean, we've helped them, but not done their school job for them.
Yeah, we're big on like, you're a student, that's your job, get it done, you got this.
Unless they have like a learning disability.
Sure,
That's
and
when
we've had-
when you
yeah.
started what you were saying, I was like, well, it sounds like she has a troubled child.
No, she's
Who
just
doesn't do
there's
good
a
in school.
no. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of parents who that's their thing. There's
Yeah,
a bunch
yeah.
of parents who they're still basically taking charge of their child's education long into middle school. You know what I mean? As if like they're thinking to themselves they're doing the right thing. Like we're helicopter parenting this thing all the way through college. You know, and like you said, it's like at some point you got to let your kids, you know, fail a little bit. Like you've got to let them figure this out, or all of a sudden they go off to college unprepared for the ups and downs of life. They go off to college with, well, my mom or my dad's going to mitigate all of the problems for me. You know, it's like, that's a bad scenario. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Super
Yeah.
bad scenario. Yeah. I was telling somebody the other day about Ethan, because when Ethan first went to work on his own, he was traveling with MPSG and stuff. He told me much later, after he stopped working, so a year after he stopped working, he told me about something that happened 18 months to 2 years ago when he was working. He was saying, it was really hard, Dad. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when I first started, word got around that I knew Danny, I knew Eric, I knew all these people in the company. And so the guys that had been working for the company were treating me like, crap. You know what I'm saying? They were just riding me really hard, crazy. And he goes, I can remember being in Europe and just almost like crying every night, like going, these guys aren't going to let up. You know what I'm saying? And in my mind, I was like, yeah, I understand that, like hazing, that's got to be hard. But I was like so proud that he didn't come to me and was like upset about it, that he just figured it out and figured out how to win their confidence. And like you got to let your kids do those things, right? Or they'll never figure that out. I don't know how to
Well,
say
what
that.
confidence
Yeah.
are you building in your kids if you are going to school with them, essentially? You're not helping build their confidence. They don't know how to manage their grades, get their work in on time. If mommy's always telling them, you have a report due on Thursday, let's get it done. You're not teaching them those study skills and giving them the confidence that they need to be able to do those things on their own. And I'm not talking about, if there's obviously accommodations that need to be made. Remember that one year we literally had a tutor over at the house every night of the week?
Yeah.
We're not opposed to giving them
The
the tools
tools.
they need,
Right,
but
right.
you can't do that for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to grow up to be confident young adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So figuring that out, like, how do I convince them of my love for them and my trust, extend my trust and confidence that they can do it, that they can succeed in whatever area that they're in, to the goals that they want to see. You know what I'm saying? And that are healthy goals. Like, that's a fine balance that if you get off, you're going to exasperate your kid, right? That kid's going to be unconvinced of your love, that your love is somehow attached to performance, which is definitely not what the outcome you want. And that's a dangerous situation for a child, So you're their first example of grace and love and all that stuff, and you got to figure that out, how to daily communicate that. You know what I mean?
I think adults do the same thing to themselves, though. Like, I'm not valuable unless I'm productive.
Sure.
So that's very easy to pass on to a kid if that's your focus.
Mhm.
Yeah. We see a bunch of you're newly retired, but I see a bunch of retiree guys that really struggle with this, right? Their job has become their identity. And then when that job stops, like, I see a lot of guys not deal with that well at all, have mental health issues, have emotional response issues, like have family problems that extend from
Like,
that.
they're not valuable anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Which that's a dangerous outcome. We've talked about it a lot in the men's groups. We end up talking about this a lot. Like, hey, has your job become your identity? Because if it has, your identity should be in God, right? Not in like a job. That's idolatry to some extent, So yeah, you're right. Like, how do you create a family where the love is attached to the child, not to their performance, right? At the same time, inspiring them to achieve the goals they want to achieve. Like, that is not the easiest balance to keep, but that truly is what great parents are trying to figure out how to do.
Well, and not only that, teaching your child from a very young age that their worth comes from Christ, that
Right.
they're worthy because of Christ and because of what Christ did for them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of adults grew up never learning that or never hearing that, and then they don't feel worthy. And so if we can teach that to our kids now, it might be a little easier into adulthood, maybe. I don't know.
No, I think so. Like, Mike and I were talking because this is not the first rodeo. We've got lots of friends who've, their kids have gotten to late adolescent years, and and you got girls tend to go through a really hard time there, right? Where like before they go through puberty and kind of into their own sexuality, you've got, you know, their only knowledge of appreciation from a male comes from their father. And if there's a hole there, a gap there, then things get off the rails really quickly. If they don't have that love and, you know, all that, then the first guy that comes along, you know, it's like, I love you, you're great. It's like, I'll believe it. You know, and it's like, man, this is not good. And trying to, as a parent, go, hey, your love, my love for you is not attached to performance. It's not attached to your appearance. It's not attached to anything. I love you for you, and you're great, and you're awesome, right? And fill her up with that so that she's ready to face a world of people who are going to like con her into a whole bunch of, you know, fake love. Like, that's tough. It's tough to manage, right?
Yeah, it is tough, but I would like to
Oh, really?
also say
Really?
that we can do the best job we can, love our children, do all of these things and do them well. And at the end of the day, when your kids are 18, they're going to make decisions, and
For
we're not
sure.
responsible for those decisions. And so a parent can, and a father could have done all of those things.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, I'm not
we're not
conveying-
responsible
if you
for
got
our
tough
adult parents.
situations going on with your kids,
Our
and
adult
it's not
children's
heaping blame on
decisions.
you as a parent. Like, those are tough situations, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just think back, like, my parents did a great job, and I still came
Went off the rails.
I went a little left and a little right, and, you know, but you just hope that they come back,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Do you feel like your kids are coming now, though, for some advice? I'm back around for like, you get any of that?
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so.
I get it. It's usually not like relationship overly or relational advice. Usually it's like, I cherish all of it. Like
Yeah.
last week it was like how to deal with like identity theft. We're talking about banking and stuff, but I'm like, he's like, I like being the first call where he's like, hey, you won't believe this. You know, he's like, run me through, what should I do? You know, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Should have had LifeLock.
But you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's a nice call, because then it's like,
No.
hey, there's enough trust here, there's
Right.
enough
Right.
appreciation here
You're not
that
gonna-
I'm on the list,
Yeah.
right, of calls for like, hey, Dad, help me with this, right? You know, you feel like you've done a little work there. That they're not like, oh gosh, the last person I'm calling is that dude, because he drives me nuts, right?
There's a lot of relationships like that, a lot of child-parent relationships that are like that.
Okay, parenting's not easy. We know it's tough. I think the idea of not exasperating your children, though, is convincing them that they are absolutely loved in their own right, and no performance will change that, up or down. So work on that. We'll be back next Monday for more live stream stuff. Donnie and Donna, welcome back.
Thank you.
Love you guys. Mean it. See ya. All right.